December 2024.
This is it! This is the big time!
The pop of the champagne cork cracked through the half-empty office, ricocheted off a ceiling panel, and disappeared behind a filing cabinet, never to be seen again. Meanwhile, Toby Fleming, my boss and so-called mentor, placed his thumb over the top of the bottle and began spraying foaming liquid around as if he'd just won the Monaco Grand Prix. This probably wasn't the wisest thing to do in a room full of expensive electronic equipment, and I watched as Marcus, one of the IT guys in my team, cast a brief look of disapproval as several droplets spattered his keyboard. And when I say brief, I mean scarcely a flicker. It didn't do for employees to show disapproval of anything Toby did, not if they wanted to remain employed. The place was unusually quiet, or at least it had been before Toby had burst in brandishing the bolly. Normally around 20 of us worked in here, in this open-plan space which formed the IT department of the large tech company I worked for. Today, New Year's Eve, there were just 6 of us in the room, including me, Toby, and his glamorous PA who followed him around everywhere like a devoted puppy. Then there were the 3 IT lads who had been unlucky enough to draw the short straws for keeping the place ticking over during the downtime between Christmas and New Year. As head of the IT team, I had the plum desk right next to the window. We were 20 floors up a skyscraper in Canary Wharf, with the Docklands laid out beneath us and the rest of London stretching away into the distance, the Thames looping around the bustling city. The pale winter sun was glinting off the glass of the nearby HSBC tower, dazzling enough to make me squint. Somewhere far to the west, final preparations would be underway for the big New Year's Eve fireworks that would light up the sky at midnight, ushering in another year. But I'd be long gone by then, back on the tube to Amersham, where I'd probably kick around my dismal empty flat on my own. I wouldn't be partying, that's for sure. How can you celebrate when you've got no one to celebrate with?
I've only gone and done it again, continued Toby. Sold it to a big Malaysian corporation this time. $200 million. I, by which of course I mean we, have just made a fortune. Or should I say, another fortune.
Toby had a habit of crowing like this in an overly loud voice which drowned out everyone else. It didn't matter where it was, in the office, a crowded pub, somebody's wedding reception, or wherever else he happened to be. He liked the sound of his own voice and considered what he had to say was more important than anything anyone else might want to say. Therefore, it was perfectly acceptable to talk over them. It was one of his many insufferable traits that I had been enduring for well over 4 decades. As for those self-congratulatory moments, I had seen enough of them to last a lifetime. I'd lost count of the number of times I'd heard similar declarations about hitting the big time, and the most annoying thing was that he was usually right. Or perhaps that was the second most annoying thing. Because what really got my goat was that these successes were almost always achieved at the expense of someone else, often me, on more occasions than I cared to remember. I watched as he pranced about wearing one of his trademark bright shirts, scarlet on this occasion, with a glossy sheen that looked almost wet under the office lights. It didn't go at all with the green suit he was wearing. It was a colour clash worthy of the old ZX Spectrum itself, the machine that had inspired my IT career and, in part, set Toby on the road to the fortune he had now acquired. He was as full of himself as ever at age 62, carrying himself with the same arrogant poise and permanent self-satisfied smile that he'd had in his early 20s. I noticed that his blonde hair was looking particularly bouffant today, almost comical from my perspective, given that up until a year or 2 ago he had been decidedly thinning on top. No doubt he had been investing some of his fortune in hair transplants, to go with the gleaming new set of gnashers he was currently dazzling the room with. Lola, his PA, had perched on the edge of my desk with one leg crossed over the other and was cheering and clapping in such a ridiculously over-the-top manner that you could be forgiven for imagining he had hired her for this exact purpose. I had concluded she was either a gold digger or a high-class hooker, and I was also convinced they were at it. You could tell from the adoring, probably fake gazes she constantly cast in his direction. Younger than him by decades, she was wearing a silk blouse beneath a business suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent and was perfectly made up with newly done lashes and a neat black bob that never had a hair out of place. Toby strutted across the floor with the bottle to a spare desk where we'd brought in a few buffet bits and pieces for a half-hearted impromptu office party that no one was really bothered about. The other IT guys, like me, weren't ones for letting their hair down. There weren't even any champagne flutes, but that didn't bother Toby, who was by now eagerly filling up the cheap paper cups that Marcus had brought in, which he hadn't anticipated being used for anything stronger than lemonade.
"To the future," said Toby. "Today marks the end of a long chapter in the ongoing story of information technology and the beginning of a new one. Our new system is going to change the world."
I raised my cup because everyone else did, but the fizz left a bitter taste in my mouth. He was talking about the system I'd built, me and the others around me, with no input from him whatsoever. He liked to style himself to the media as this amazing technical IT guru, which was the persona he had built up over the years. But the truth was, he barely knew his ROM from his RAM. Without us, the engine room behind him, he was nothing. The three IT lads, all under 30, murmured their congratulations and wandered over to the snack table to nibble on the humble assortment of food on offer, which amounted to a few of those 2 for a $5 sharing boxes you see on the ends of the aisle in supermarkets. There were mini Scotch eggs, sausage rolls, plus some dips and breadsticks. As they poked at the food, Toby continued to waffle on, at least a dozen decibels louder than he needed to be, given there were so few of us, none of whom had been able to utter so much as a single word since he had burst in.
"By the end of next year, this company will be one of the biggest names in global technology. This new AI system of mine, ours, will be running everything from supermarkets to shipping lines. You boys are going to be able to say you were here at the start of it all. And best of all, I'm almost certain to make the Sunday Times rich list on the back of it. Happy days."
I let my gaze drift to the city outside as he carried on. The sun glinted off the glass towers of the wharf, while far below, streams of traffic crawled along the A13 towards the Blackwall Tunnel. They might not have been moving very fast, but at least they were going somewhere. I didn't feel like I was going anywhere, despite all of Toby's enthusiasm. I could hardly believe I was still working for him after all this time, given the number of times he had shafted me over the years. I had tried to break free of him on numerous occasions, but somehow he always seemed to find me again, like a hound that had got my scent. I thought I had shaken him off this time after 7 years at this company as head of IT. Then, 4 years ago, he had bought it out. I often wondered if it was a coincidence or if he'd deliberately come here just to torment me. I thought about leaving there and then, but like a fool, I let him talk me into staying. I didn't really have anywhere else to go. A brilliantly gifted IT engineer I might have been, but it's a young man's game. And already in my 50s, I wasn't confident I'd be able to get another position. Besides, I liked it here, or rather I had before Toby left his stench all around the place like an animal marking its territory. Slowly the culture changed, and by now it was just a soulless corporate dictatorship with him at the helm surrounded by yes-men. He only kept me on because he enjoyed lording it over me, and I was useful to him. It certainly wasn't for old time's sake, because I had precious little positive to say about our shared past. The good old days they most certainly were not. Over the years, he'd stolen Nemesis, the game I wrote when I was 17, he'd stolen my girl, and he'd stolen my dignity. Any self-respecting man would have walked away long ago, yet here I was, self-esteem in tatters and life in a mess, renting a flat at the end of a tube line because I'd lost my house when I got divorced 2 years ago. So that's why I was in no mood for celebrating. Thankfully, he didn't hang around long, and it was quite clear why when he slapped Lola on the arse, leading her to give out a playful squeal.
"Well, guys, we mustn't take up any more of your valuable time.
How about we finish this off in my office, hey, Lola?" he asked as he flashed his eyes lasciviously in return. "Whatever you say, Toby," she replied submissively, making me more convinced than ever she was on the payroll, and I don't mean for her administrative skills.
"Oh, by the way, Robbie," he said, turning back to me, "a word in my office if you don't mind. Give me half an hour, though. Bit of business to take care of first, if you know what I mean."
We all knew what he meant, and it pained me to think of Ellie, his long-suffering wife at home, presumably oblivious to what her husband got up to. At least I hoped she didn't know. The thought that she might ignore or condone his behavior purely to maintain the lavish lifestyle being married to him gave her was something I didn't want to even contemplate. Because she was the girl who had once briefly been mine, before fate took her away from me. I could barely bring myself to think about the heartbreaking circumstances under which that had occurred, and to rub salt into that wound, it had been me who had introduced her to him in the first place. Thoughts of everything that man has done to me over the years devour my every waking moment like a cancer eating away at my soul, yet I never talk to anyone about it. Why not? Because I can't think of any way of describing the whole sorry catalogue of events without sounding not only bitter and twisted, but also like a complete loser. Perhaps that is why he has beaten me consistently, because I have adopted the loser mentality. I expect it to happen, so it happens, a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yet still I let it go on. It's like that old expression, the definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And now here we are, over 4 decades on from where we started, when I was working for him at his flourishing teen lifestyle computer magazine, Splat. Back then, I had the IT skills and all the ideas, but he had the money, the business mind, and something I don't have, and that is a ruthless streak. Maybe I was just too damn nice, believing in playing fair and by the rules. People have told me often enough that I need to toughen up, but I can't bring myself to get ahead in life by trampling over other people. Toby has no such qualms. So what have I been doing to make him his latest fortune? It's an artificial intelligence system, the one he's sold not only to the Malaysians but also several other corporations for silly money, and it really is the dog's bollocks. AI has come on in leaps and bounds in the last few years, but my new system goes further than anything else out there. It doesn't just follow instructions or run through pre-programmed logic. It observes, it analyzes, and it intuitively adapts in a way that the others don't, no matter what they might claim. Once you set it in motion, it takes control of whatever it's tasked with, from managing a transport network to running a factory, and it learns from every decision it makes. It can predict problems before they happen and reallocate resources accordingly, without any human input at all, and it doesn't hallucinate or make mistakes. Inevitably, in reviewing my system, the media have raised the usual doomsday warnings about machines taking over the world and enslaving us all. That isn't going to happen. I made sure of that, There are hard-coded limits and layers of failsafes that no matter how clever the system becomes, it cannot override. It can streamline, accelerate, predict, and outperform any human 100 times over, but it can't seize control. All the time I was creating it, I kept in mind Asimov and his 3 laws of robotics. But unlike in the movie they made of I, Robot and countless other sci-fi films, my invention cannot break the rules. It would be impossible for it to wake up one day and decide to take over. Disclaimer: I hope. And yet who's the one making all the money? Toby, of course. To give him credit, he did finance the whole operation, because this was an incredibly expensive thing to create. But it's still with money he's made from past enterprises, many of which were also founded on the fruits of my labour. Don't get me wrong, I'm not pleading poverty. I earn a decent salary here and I'm comfortably well off. The only reason I'm renting is because of the divorce. I'd like to buy another house, but I'm not sure where I want to live yet. I only ended up in Amersham in the first place because I didn't want to reside in London, and it's about as far as you can go on the tube. Now I take the slow ride home every evening to an empty flat not far from my former home, where my ex-wife still lives, but now with some bloke she met at a Pilates class. I've been considering going back to Oxfordshire, to the little village I grew up in. I was happy there, or at least I was until Toby screwed me over the second time. Or was it the third? I lose count after so many humiliations. And now I've got this familiar feeling in my bones. A creeping, unmistakable sense of impending doom. He's already taken all the credit for my AI system, and now I sense he's about to stick the boot in once again. He wants me in his office for a reason, and I know exactly what he's doing in the half hour he's keeping me waiting. He's rubbing my nose in it by showing off the life he has that I don't. I haven't had sex for over a year. "Look at me," he's saying. "I'm rich and I can sleep with women half my age whenever I like." Whether he's paying for them or not is irrelevant. In some ways it would be better if he were. At least then I'd know they weren't doing it because they fancied him. The thought of anyone actually liking him as a human being, that's truly repellent. It doesn't help that I'm on my own and lonely a lot of the time. It's not easy to find a partner when you're middle-aged and overweight, however good one's intentions might be. That's why Toby's behaviour irks me so much. I'm not as unfit as I was at the time of my divorce. I've been fighting the battle with the bulge since my early 40s and have got serious about it this past year, including going to the gym since Easter. Although I have lost a couple of stone, my weight now sits stubbornly at around the 16 stone mark, which is just over 100 kilos, and try as I might, I cannot lose any more. It's as if my body has drawn a line in the sand. Eat all the salad you like, it's saying. Lay off the booze, run that treadmill until your feet ache. You're not going any lower, my friend. That's your limit. I let slip to the younger guys in the office that I'd like to meet someone new, and now they keep suggesting dating apps. I know that's the way it's done nowadays, but the whole concept leaves me cold. Despite my high-tech career and lifestyle, I've always believed in meeting people naturally when it comes to affairs of the heart. Not that I can envisage how that's supposed to happen these days. The only women I see are on the tube or in the supermarket, and in this modern atomized world of ours, even acknowledging the existence of another human being with a smile feels like a social crime. Goodness knows what would happen if I attempted to strike up a conversation with any of them. I even tried asking ChatGPT and my own AI system for advice on the matter, but was disappointed with the generic responses. These systems can manage complex global logistics, crunching trillions of pieces of data without breaking a sweat. But when it comes to the complexities of love and attraction between two human beings, they're as helpless as the rest of us. You could link together every computer in the world, combine all their processing power into one super intelligence, and I still don't think they'd be able to solve this, the most perplexing riddle of all. It's rather like that bit in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy where they try to get a supercomputer to discover the meaning of life. So it seems I'm destined to remain alone for the time being. There's been no one since my wife decided she'd had enough of me, and I can't really blame her. Listening to me moan about all the injustices in my life must have been unbearable. Her leaving was just another woe to add to the ever-growing list. So now it's just me, the tube to Amersham, and an empty flat. Not exactly living the dream, is it? I glanced at the buffet table, eyes alighting on some mini pork pies. If I ate so much as a single one, I'd be letting my belt out a notch. My body has a miraculous talent for calorie multiplication, which could alleviate world hunger if someone could work out how to bottle it. A bite-sized snack goes in my mouth at an ounce and somehow adds a pound to the scales. So I resisted the temptation and went to the gents for a slash, mentally preparing myself for my visit to Toby's office. I washed my hands and took a long, hard look in the mirror. A heavy-set 57-year-old man stared back. Thinning brown hair now greying at the edges. A face older than its years with several moles and blotches that seemed to be multiplying. Lines dug into my forehead from too much frowning above my thick-rimmed glasses, one of 3 pairs I carry for various purposes. I couldn't get on with varifocals or contact lenses. I sighed, dried my hands, and headed for the stairs. The lift would have been easier, but the seemingly fruitless mission to lose more weight pushed me to make the effort. I had left it precisely the requested half hour when I knocked on Toby's office door.
"Come in,"
he bellowed, when he really didn't need to. The glass surrounding the building was soundproof to keep out the noise of the city, and a normal speaking voice would have been perfectly sufficient. I opened it to find exactly what I expected. Toby was zipping up his trousers while Lola was fastening the buttons on her blouse. She looked like the proverbial cat that had got the cream with her flushed cheeks and ruffled hair. Both gave me a proud, self-indulgent look that suggested they were not in the least bit embarrassed. No, they had probably wanted me to see this.
"Nothing like working up an appetite for lunch, is there, Lola?" he said, smirking.
"You said it, Tiger," she simpered, batting her lashes at him while reaching below her skirts to tug at her knickers as if trying to maneuver them back into place.
"Do me a favour, honey. Pop down to M&S, get something nice to eat and bring it back up here. Take the corporate Amex."
He handed her the card, flashing it my way with a little flourish, purely to show off, before she almost skipped to the door, giddy in her post-orgasmic bliss, neatly sidestepping the now empty champagne bottle that was lying on the floor. As soon as she was gone, I closed the door behind her. I was totally sick of this and had resolved to have it out with him, even if I lost my job in the process, which I strongly suspected was on the cards anyway. "Does Ellie know you're fucking other women behind her back?" I put it bluntly. Toby laughed.
"I don't know, and to be honest, I don't care. She knows which side her bread's buttered on. And it's not yours."
"That's not very friendly, is it? After I've just designed you a system that's making you hundreds of millions of pounds." He leaned forward in his chair, laying his hands flat on his glass desk, the epitome of smugness. As I moved closer, I was horrified to notice a slight damp patch on his crotch.
"Designed being the operative word, and I can't deny you've done a great job. In fact, it's brilliant. And the best thing about it, it practically runs itself. Doesn't need anyone to maintain or update it. You know what that means, don't you?"
"It's cheaper to run," I said.
"Yes, that's one thing. No one needs to babysit it. In addition, you've designed it so it can develop its next generation model unaided. You've written yourself out of a job."
I wouldn't be so sure about that. How do you know I haven't built in something you don't know about, as a bit of insurance, just to protect myself in the eventuality I end up in the scenario I suspect I'm now in?
Because you're too honest, Robbie. Too decent and too trusting for your own good. You wouldn't do something like that. And even if you did, you're not the only one who knows the system. That team of young lads downstairs have been working with you for years. They get paid a fraction of what you do, and they do as they're told. No moaning, no questioning my decisions. Unlike you. The only reason I've put up with you this long was to get this project over the line. And now it's finished, I don't need you anymore."
He let those words hang in the air for a moment, then delivered the final blow.
"In other words, you're fired."
I stared at him, but it wasn't in disbelief. I'd seen this coming a mile off, but strangely, hearing the words out loud didn't hurt in the slightest. If anything, it was a relief. I'd finally be rid of the bastard, and best of all, it gave me free rein to get a few things off my chest. You know, Toby, I've put up with a lot from you over the years. Way more than I should have done. You take the ideas and hard work of other people and squeeze everything you can out of them before you discard them like a piece of orange peel stripped bare. You stole Nemesis from me, then wrecked the life of the girl I loved. And then there was poor Lee. Look what you did to him.
I didn't do anything to him. He was weak-willed and couldn't handle the pressure. That's why he killed himself.
Pressure largely of your making. You've spent your whole life stepping on people like me and Lee to get where you are, and have convinced yourself that makes you some kind of genius. You throw parties, you splash champagne around as if you've done all this single-handedly, and you think that makes people respect you. But they don't. You're shallow. You're selfish. To sum it all up, you're just one big parasite and everyone knows it. They just don't have the guts to say it. If I thought any of this was going to hit home, I was deluding myself. He just sat there listening, the damp patch from his leaky willy spreading across his green suit trousers, with an expression of detached amusement until I ran out of steam.
"Thanks," he said smoothly. "I'll take that as a compliment. And don't worry, I won't hold it against you when it comes to your severance pay. Pop into HR on your way out. You'll find a lovely big redundancy check waiting. Don't say I never do anything for you."
"You've never done anything for me except screw me over," I replied. "I should have seen through you from the start when you took Nemesis from me."
"You were paid fair and square for that. It was all above board."
"I was a kid. You took advantage of me. I didn't realize what I was signing away."
"Well, it's too late to go crying about it now. Perhaps if you'd been less wet behind the ears 40 years ago, things would have been different."
"Maybe they would," I said. "But it's too late now." I'd had enough and turned on my heel and walked to the door, but I was determined to have the last word. As I reached for the handle, I glanced back at him. "By the way," I said, "did you know you're dribbling into your pants? Time to invest in some tenor, I'd say." Then I let the door slam behind me, imagining him looking down at the damp patch on his trousers. I don't know why, but that amused me enormously. I did as he suggested and headed to HR, where the finance lady already had everything ready. There was no actual check to take to the bank, of course. The continued use of the word check was now merely one of tradition. What she handed me was just a printed slip confirming that nearly £200,000 had already been transferred into my current account. A tidy sum, certainly, but when I thought of the 200 million Toby had just pocketed from the Malaysians, It felt like crumbs from the master's table. Just like that, my 11 years at the company were over. I emerged from the glass and steel lobby into the sharp bite of the winter air to see that the plazas and walkways of Canary Wharf were busy with office workers on their lunch breaks, coats clutched tight against the chill as delivery cyclists weaved dangerously between pedestrians and taxis. One ignored the red lights at the junction by the DLR, drawing angry blasts from a black cab driver. It was just another day in London's financial district, a place which, right now, I couldn't care less if I never saw again. I took the Jubilee line to Wembley Park, then changed onto the Metropolitan. As luck would have it, the next train to Amersham was just pulling in. The first leg of my journey had been crowded, but this carriage was almost empty, which was not unusual outside the rush hour, especially this far out on the network. When people think of the tube, they invariably picture tunnels deep underground, but this second leg of my journey was all above ground and would carry me out of London beyond the M25. I was going about as far out as it is possible to go on the tube, and I settled in almost contentedly for the remaining journey of around 3/4 of an hour. There was a distinct air of satisfaction about the thought that this could well be the last time I would ever have to make this trip. I stared out of the window as the city slipped further behind me, thinking about the money in my bank account and wondering whether, combined with what I already had, it would be enough to take early retirement. Realistically, it probably wasn't, given my wish to buy another house, but at least I could live where I wanted now that I was no longer tied to this commute. All I needed to do was find a way to keep making money for another 2 or 3 years until my private pension kicked in at 60. There were only 2 other people in the entire carriage, a canoodling young couple far too besotted with each other to notice me. They were wrapped up entirely in their own little bubble and got off at the next stop, Preston Road. It was a quiet station, and it was quite rare for anyone to board here going north. Nonetheless, a smartly dressed middle-aged man, slightly older than me at first glance, stepped onto the carriage at the front. I watched as he made his way steadily down the aisle towards the rear where I was sitting. I always preferred to be at the back, as someone had once told me it was the safest place to be in the event of an accident. What soon became unsettling was that he was staring at me. Eye contact on the tube was virtually unheard of, no matter how crowded the train. Tacit etiquette demanded that you either bury yourself in your phone or study the adverts above the windows. There were even notices telling you not to stare. But this man was blatantly flouting the rules. He was walking straight towards me, eyes locked, and the closer he got, the clearer it became that he intended to speak to me. "Is this seat taken?" he asked, looming over me. I glanced around the almost empty carriage. Rows of vacant seats stretched in every direction, so the question was patently ridiculous and made me feel decidedly uncomfortable. It was as if someone had walked into the gents' toilet with a dozen free urinals and taken the one right next to me. You just didn't do it. No, I said, a little thrown by developments. Good, he replied, and promptly sat down beside me, far closer than was socially acceptable, and extended his hand as if we were old friends. "My name's Robin," he said, "but my friends call me Nobby." "Hello, Robin," I replied, deliberately avoiding the nickname. I wanted to make it clear that we were not friends, though he seemed keen to become one. I still shook his hand, though, albeit reluctantly. Not to have done so would have been rude. "What can I do for you?" I asked in a guarded tone. This sort of over-familiarity just wasn't the done thing. "It's more about what I can do for you, actually," he replied cheerfully. "Here we go. This bloke's going to try to flog me something. A dodgy investment scheme, maybe, or the chance to switch my broadband or energy plan. The sort of thing you get ambushed with outside Morrison's when all you went in for was a loaf of bread. Had they stooped to harassing people on trains now? I'm not buying anything, I said flatly.
That's all right then, because I'm not selling, he said. All I want is a moment of your time. That's what they all say. Maybe they do, but I'm willing to bet I've got a lot more to offer than the rest of them. And I like a bet, or at least I used to. Now, let me guess. You're probably having a bad day, or maybe a bad year, or even a bad life. Am I right?
What are you, some kind of clairvoyant? I'm not crossing your palm with silver for you to lie to me and tell me I've got a rosy future, because I'm pretty sure I haven't. He laughed like he was in on some big joke that I wasn't privy to. And there we have it. I knew you were having a bad time, I can just tell. From your body language for a start, slumped back in that chair, you're feeling crushed by the weight of the world, aren't you? Oh, I see. You're not a clairvoyant, I replied. You're a psychoanalyst. Will you be asking about my mother next? You know, if you would just listen to what I've come to say and stop trying to second-guess me, we might get somewhere. I'm not a salesman, a clairvoyant, or a devotee of the teachings of Sigmund Freud. Now just tell me honestly, has anything bad happened to you today? As a matter of fact, yes. I have just been sacked, if you must know. But that is probably my own stupid fault for carrying on working for the snake who has been sinking his fangs into me all my life. I should have seen it coming. To be honest, I probably did, but I still let it happen anyway. Ah, I see, said Nobby or Robin or whatever he wanted to be called. Now we're getting somewhere. And I bet you feel incredibly angry, don't you? You dearly wish you could get your revenge. There's fat chance of that. I have known this guy for over 40 years and he has been the bloody bane of my life. He's stolen my ideas, got rich on my creativity, and even charmed away and sullied the woman I adored. And yet I still let myself end up working for him again. How much of a mug does that make me? I can see you're feeling pretty cut up about it all, said Nobby. But doesn't it help getting it all off your chest? You see, I expect you're feeling better already. I suppose it helps having someone to vent to, even a total stranger who can do absolutely nothing about it. Oh, I wouldn't be too hasty jumping to that conclusion. You'd be surprised what I might be able to do for you. But firstly, answer me this. You said you've known this guy, what's his name, for decades. How long exactly? His name's Toby, and since the early 80s. My first job was working for him when he ran a teen magazine called Splat. Oh, that's Toby. Yes, I know who he is. I've seen him on television. He comes across as a right arrogant prick. I'm glad you said that, because at least I know I'm not the only one who can see it. Despite my initial reservations, I was beginning to warm to Nobby. It felt like he was on my side, and that was something I needed right now. I didn't even care what his reason for wanting to talk to me was anymore, because he was temporarily keeping at bay the constant ache of isolation that dogged my life. Oh, you're not the only one, believe me. Toby Fleming, what an arsehole. Well, I think it's about time he was put in his place, permanently. And I think you're just the person to do it. Me? What can I do? He's so rich he's practically untouchable. Now, maybe. But what about in the past? Imagine if you had known 40 years ago what you know now. What could you have done with that knowledge to change the way things turned out? A hell of a lot, I said. I would never have let him take advantage of me the way he did. My whole life would have been different. I'm sure it would, because I've been where you are. A year ago, I wasn't going anywhere either. My entire life consisted of betting on the horses and hanging out with a bunch of losers in the pub. I had no one and nothing to look forward to, and most of it was down to things that happened 40 years before. Things you can't do anything about now, I said as the train rolled into Harrow on the Hill. That's where you're wrong, he replied. It turns out I could. I met this stranger, you see, a woman who came into my life on New Year's Eve, just like I've popped into yours right now. Her name was Jenna, and she gave me a bracelet and told me it would send me back 40 years in time so I could fix everything for the better. I'm still wearing it right now. This was a remarkable claim, and I examined him closely, searching his eyes for any hint of a lie. When they betrayed nothing, I glanced down at his wrists. He was dressed in a smart suit, and I could see only his bare skin with no sign of any bracelet. Perhaps it was concealed beneath one of his sleeves. I don't believe you. There's nothing there, I said. Look again, he insisted, pulling up his left sleeve. For a moment I still saw nothing. Then from nowhere it appeared, an ornate carved golden bracelet shimmering into view. At its center was a single green jewel pulsing faintly with a light that suggested some hidden power source. I was mesmerized. Without thinking, I reached forward with my left arm as though some part of me already knew that my destiny was tied to this object. All I wanted to do was feel it and share in its power. And as soon as my arm brushed against his, the bracelet uncoiled itself from his arm and slithered across like a living thing, wrapping snugly around my wrist and locking into place. A warmth spread through me, radiating from the bracelet to every corner of my body. I could feel the power from it infiltrating my very being, yet there was nothing sinister about it. This was no demonic entity possessing me for its own evil ends, and I knew I had nothing to fear. The train gave a gentle shudder as it began to move again, causing the still empty carriage to sway slightly from side to side. Having leaned forward to take possession of the bracelet, I sank back into my seat, heart racing from what had just happened. The device was warm on my wrist, and although I felt perfectly fine, I also felt changed somehow. Better? Asked Nobby, who had been scrutinizing me intently during the whole process, which had taken, well, I wasn't sure how long exactly, so all-consuming had been the process. It can't have been more than a few seconds, as we were still pulling out of Harrow on the Hill. Yes, I think so, I said after a pause, turning to Nobby to ask, so what is this thing exactly? It's quite straightforward, he replied. At midnight tonight, you'll go back 40 years in time. You'll be back in your body as it was then, living a whole year all over again. When I was 17. If you're 57 now, then yes, which is bad news if you were hoping to get served in the pub. Not for long, my birthday is in February, I said after thinking for a moment, and I doubt that will be a problem anyway. From what I remember, they weren't too strict about that sort of thing back then. Good, because it'll be a lot easier to do some of the things you might need to do if you're an adult. What sort of things? Whatever the bracelet requires of you, and whatever you feel you need to do to fix the things that went wrong in your life during that specific year. In this case, 1985. The bracelet always chooses people for a reason, and it always sends them back to the most pivotal year of their life. I thought about Toby and all that had gone on today, as well as in the past. You're right. 1985 was the year it all started to go wrong. Good, because now, armed with all the knowledge of what happened that year, you've got the chance to put it right.